There was still steam on the mirror when I found it. Her toothbrush was gone. Her makeup bag, too. She even took the lavender oil I'd bought her last Christmas, the one she swore she didn't even like. But she forgot something. Sitting behind the cabinet door, tucked beneath an old bottle of NyQuil, was a folded receipt from the Cedar Hollow Lodge, a luxury spa resort that wasn't anywhere near the cabin she told me she'd booked. 3 nights, 1 king bed, 2 guests, a room service charge for champagne and Belgian chocolate fondue, and right at the bottom, scribbled in loopy cursive next to the guest survey section, "Thank you for the unforgettable weekend. Reese Kissmark." My heart didn't drop. It paused, frozen midair like it didn't want to see what came next. She'd only been home for 47 minutes. Enough time to kiss me on the cheek, drop her bag in the foyer, and say she was exhausted from travel. Enough time to smile that thin, empty smile. Enough time to lie, again. I didn't tell her what I found. I walked out of the bathroom with the receipt in my back pocket like it was radioactive. She was in the kitchen pouring herself oat milk like nothing had changed. I asked her casually, too casually, "How was the retreat?" She smiled. "Quiet. Peaceful. I think I really recentered myself." I nodded. I even smiled back. She didn't notice my hand trembling. We had dinner like strangers. I told her the chicken was dry. She laughed, said I was turning into a food critic. She had no idea I was staring at her like she was a stranger, like someone wearing Fallon's skin. That night, she showered while humming. She always hums when she's hiding something. At exactly 11:14 p.m., while she scrolled through Pinterest in bed, I walked to her side of the room, opened her drawer, and placed the receipt on top of her folded pajamas. She looked up at me, confused, and all I said was, "You forgot something in the bathroom, Fallon." The color drained from her face like someone flipped a switch. She didn't speak, not even a whisper. She just stared, not at the receipt, but at me, like she wasn't sure who I was anymore. Like the man standing in front of her was suddenly dangerous. She was right to be scared, not because I would hurt her, but because I was finally done letting her hurt me. Fallon didn't say a word that night. She just sat there on the edge of the bed with the receipt in her lap, as if it might rewrite itself if she stared hard enough. I didn't push her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask who Reese was. I just walked out of the bedroom, went downstairs, and slept on the couch with my clothes still on. I didn't sleep. The silence of the house felt louder than any scream could have. Every tick of the thermostat sounded like mockery. I kept glancing at the stairs, half expecting her to come down and say something. Anything. But all I heard was the slow creak of floorboards above me, and eventually, the click of the bedroom door locking. She locked it. At 6:10 a.m., I brewed coffee. 2 mugs. Reflex. She didn't come down. I dumped hers in the sink. Around noon, I heard her start moving again. Drawers opening. A zipper. That panicked pace of someone trying to gather things fast. I walked up the stairs and leaned against the hallway wall just outside the bedroom. The door was open now. She turned when she saw me. Her expression was made of glass. Not fragile, but see-through. "I'm not running," she said. I nodded, even though I knew she was. I need space to figure things out," she added. "I think you deserve that much." I wanted to laugh in her face. I deserve space? After her little luxury escape with someone who signs notes with hearts and lipstick? But instead, I asked the question that had been clanging around my skull all night. "Who is he?" She blinked. That fake blink people do when they're stalling for time. Then she said, "It's not what you think. It's complicated." Of course it was. Complicated. The word cheaters use when they want you to believe they're the real victim in their own mess. "He's not. It wasn't like that," she stammered. "He was just there. He had the room next to mine. We started talking. I didn't plan it, okay?" "And the king bed?" I asked. "The chocolates? The note?" Fallon closed her eyes. She actually had the audacity to look wounded. "I didn't sleep with him," she said quickly, almost too quickly. "It was just emotional. We connected. He made me feel." I held up my hand. I didn't want to know what he made her feel. But here's the thing. I didn't believe her. Not for a second. You don't leave your toothbrush behind for an emotional connection. "Still," I asked, "his name's Reese?" That's when her eyes did something they hadn't done all morning. They darted. "No," she said. "Yes. I mean, that's what he goes by." "Goes by," I repeated. That part hit weird. I didn't ask more. Not yet. Instead, I just said, "You should go." Fallon opened her mouth, like she wanted to argue, but then she nodded, grabbed her bag, walked out without saying goodbye. As the door closed, I felt the quiet settle again. It wasn't relief. It was something colder. Later that day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called the resort. I told them I'd left a watch in room 309 and asked if someone could check for it. The woman on the phone said, "I'm sorry, sir, but there's no record of your name or your wife's name on that room. That reservation was under someone named Cameron Hale." I froze. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes, sir. Reserved for Mr. Hale and guest. The room was paid in full by him." That was the moment something snapped in my brain, because my wife had told me she paid for everything, that she'd found a last-minute solo package. And now I knew that the room, the champagne, the chocolates, and the entire trip was bankrolled by a man I'd never even heard of. And if Reese wasn't even his real name, who the hell was he? I hung up the phone and just sat there staring at the wall, asking myself the question that wouldn't stop ringing in my head. How long had Fallon been planning this? And what did she think she was coming back to? I should have stopped digging, but silence is a strange kind of torture. Once you realize you've been lied to, really lied to, every quiet second feels like it's daring you to find more. So I did. I sat down with Fallon's laptop, which she stupidly left unlocked, and went straight into her browser history. At first, it was nothing alarming. Articles about emotional fatigue and how to love yourself after 35. A YouTube playlist of piano jazz. A few skincare sites. But then I saw a link that didn't fit. A booking confirmation from 2 weeks ago for the Cedar Hollow Lodge, not under her name, but Cameron Hale. I followed that trail, and it led me to a LinkedIn page. Cameron Hale, executive consultant. San Francisco. Attractive, smug-looking guy with a sharp suit and a smile that screamed, "I know I can ruin your life and sleep just fine." He wasn't a ghost anymore. He was real. And he looked like the kind of man Fallon used to tell me she was never attracted to. Turns out, Fallon had met him at a corporate seminar back in May. She told me it was all business. I even drove her there, like the chump I am. She said it was a networking event about sustainability partnerships. I remember because I made a dumb joke about her saving the planet with tote bags. She didn't laugh, just rolled her eyes, the way she always did when I tried too hard. God, I hate that memory now. I clicked further into Cameron's profile, and what do I find? Photos. Posts. One from a week ago, a group selfie on the balcony of a lodge that looked exactly like the one on the receipt. Fallon's not in the photo, but there's a wine glass on the railing with her distinct purple nail polish on the rim. My stomach turned. She was there, just outside the frame. She was smiling for someone else's camera, laughing at someone else's jokes. That was the moment I knew. I wasn't just betrayed. I was erased. Replaced. I didn't tell her what I found. Not yet. I wanted her to hang herself with her own stories. So when she came by the next day, said she forgot her chargers and a folder for work, I watched her walk through the house like it didn't belong to her anymore. I watched her pretend nothing was broken. She even asked me if I was okay. If I was okay. That's the kind of sociopathy I didn't know she had in her. I told her I was fine. Told her I was taking some time to think. She nodded and said she respected that. Then she had the gall to ask, "Do you think we'll be okay in the long run?" It took everything in me not to laugh in her face. She left again, not knowing I had screenshots of everything. The receipt, the LinkedIn profile, the lodge selfie, the reservation email in her trash folder, deleted but not gone. I had it all. And still, I wasn't angry. I was hollow. I kept thinking, how long had she been preparing this escape route? Was this trip her exit strategy? Was Cameron supposed to be her future? And then, one night later, around 11:30 p.m., she came back. She didn't knock. She used her spare key. I heard the door creak open from the couch. I stayed silent in the dark. I watched her silhouette enter, quietly tiptoeing toward the stairs. She was wearing different clothes this time. Not her usual clean-cut style, but something looser, messier. Like she wasn't coming from work. Like she wasn't supposed to be here at all. And then she whispered something that froze me completely. "Are you awake?" Not to me. To someone. Someone she thought might already be here. I didn't move. I barely breathed. I sat there in the dark living room, frozen, listening to her steps as they creaked softly toward the upstairs hallway. The only light in the house was the sliver of moon coming through the kitchen window, casting sharp edges on everything familiar. She hadn't turned anything on. That alone told me everything. She wasn't here for conversation. She wasn't here to talk things out or apologize. She was here because she thought he'd be here. That's what broke me the most. Not the cheating. Not the lying. Not even the cowardice. It was the quiet, matter-of-fact way she stepped back into our home with the confidence that she could bring someone else into it, like it had already stopped being ours long ago. I stood slowly, careful not to make a sound, and followed her up the stairs. I stopped just before the landing, crouched into the dark like a burglar in my own home. She stepped into the bedroom, her voice low, hushed, expectant. "Cam," she whispered. I leaned against the wall, blood pounding in my ears. So she was calling him Cam. My hands clenched. The moment didn't feel real. I kept thinking I'd wake up, or someone would walk in and say, "Okay, social experiment over." But this was my life now, twisted into something that didn't look like mine anymore. She flicked on the bedside lamp and froze. Because the room was empty. Of course it was empty. He was never here. He'd never been here. I stepped in slowly and spoke in a voice I didn't recognize as mine. "Wrong house." She jumped, spun around, and for the first time in this entire nightmare, she looked genuinely terrified. "Jesus, Wendell, what the hell are you doing?" she snapped. "I live here," I said calmly. "You forgot that." Her eyes darted around, looking for a way to regain control. She always hated losing control of a conversation, a room, a narrative. She tried to gather herself, like an actress caught missing her cue. "I just came to get some things," she said, her voice hardening now. "You said I could come by." "I said that 2 days ago," I replied. "You didn't say when you'd be here. And you definitely didn't say you'd be showing up at midnight asking for Cam like he was supposed to be waiting in my bed." She didn't deny it. That was the worst part. She didn't say, "You misunderstood." She didn't say, "It's not like that." She just looked away and muttered, "This is messy." I didn't mean for it to get messy. I laughed then. Actually laughed. It sounded like something between a bark and a sob. "No," I said. "You meant for it to be quiet. You meant for me to roll over and make room while you played house with someone else until you decided which of us was more convenient." "Don't twist this," she hissed. "I needed somewhere safe to figure things out." "Safe?" I repeated. "You mean comfortable. You mean easy. You mean somewhere you could run back to when Cameron eventually got bored." That landed. I saw the flicker in her eyes. And then, like clockwork, she snapped. "You were never enough for me. You know that, right?" She spat it like it was supposed to hurt. And it did. But not in the way she wanted. It didn't break me. It clarified everything. "You're right," I said slowly. "I wasn't enough. Not for the version of you that needed a second key made for someone who signs love notes with lipstick." That's when her face dropped. Not at the insult. No, she could handle insults. But the second key line. Because she realized I knew. I saw her lips part slightly. You went through my drawer?" "No," I said. "I watched you use it." She looked down at her purse. Her hand twitched toward it, like she might try to hide something. And that's when I noticed something else. The spare key wasn't just mine. It was a copy. One of the shiny ones from the hardware store, the kind you'd only make if someone asked for access. "Who else has one?" I asked. "Just him." Silence. "Or are there more?" Fallon turned pale. "You've been gone longer than just 5 days," I said. "And this has been happening longer than you think I've known." Her mouth opened, but the words didn't come. That's when I realized, for the first time, she wasn't scared of being caught. She was scared of what I knew that she didn't know I knew. I took a step forward. "I'm not asking you to explain anything, Fallon. I'm asking you to leave. Right now, before you find out just how much of your game I've already figured out." And that's when she asked the one question that made my blood run cold. "Did he talk to you? Did he talk to you?" That question hit like a thrown knife in a dark room. I blinked, unsure if I'd misheard, unsure if I was supposed to know what that meant, or if Fallon had just said more than she intended. I didn't answer. I just stared at her until she looked away, biting the inside of her cheek like a child caught in a lie without an escape route. She tried to recover quickly. "Never mind," she muttered, brushing past me like we hadn't just crossed a new line in this nightmare. She went straight for her purse, shoved the receipt I'd left her into it, and reached for the door. But I wasn't letting her go this time. Not until I understood what that meant. "Fallon," I said quietly, stepping into her path. "What did you mean?" She hesitated, like her next sentence had to be carefully selected from a minefield of options. "It doesn't matter," she said. "Nothing happened. Just forget I said it. But I couldn't forget. Not when the man who helped wreck my marriage might have been trying to reach me for reasons beyond guilt. That night, I couldn't sleep again. But instead of spiraling in circles, I decided to trace the one thread that hadn't snapped yet. I remembered the LinkedIn profile for Cameron Hale. I remembered the company he worked for, some vague consultancy with a name that sounded made up, Strata Solutions. Their website was bare bones, stock photos of glass buildings, buzzwords like scalable integration and client-forward excellence, and no contact email listed. But there was one forgotten press release, buried in their blog, celebrating Cameron's successful onboarding of a high-profile international partner, with an attached PDF announcement. I opened it, and that's when the floor dropped again. Because there he was, Cameron, standing in a tailored gray suit next to a grinning executive team in Geneva. And right behind him, clear as day, was Fallon. Not next to him, behind him, standing beside a woman who was introduced in the article as the head of PR for the firm. Fallon wasn't just some woman he met at a retreat. She worked with him. She had been working with him for months, maybe more. And she never told me. Not once. She spun an entirely different story. Said the Switzerland trip she took earlier this year was for a women's summit. Said she roomed with colleagues. I bought it. I booked the Uber to the airport. But now, the timeline was snapping into place, jagged edges revealing things I hadn't been willing to piece together. The retreat in the mountains? It was just another checkpoint. Another step in their little escape plan. A transition phase for her to cross the line from maybe to already gone. But what Fallon didn't realize, or maybe didn't care to consider, was that Cameron Hale wasn't as private as she thought. A few more clicks brought me to his Twitter. It hadn't been updated in a while, but his DMs were open. I stared at the blinking cursor in the message box for nearly half an hour. Then I typed, "I know who you are, and I know what you did, but I'm not sure Fallon told you the whole truth either." I didn't expect an answer. People like him don't usually lower themselves to explanations. But 15 minutes later, I saw the notification. "Cameron Hale has sent you a message. I was wondering when you'd reach out. We need to talk. You're not the only one she's lied to." And just like that, the man I'd imagined 100 ways, as a villain, a homewrecker, a smug alpha, suddenly sounded like something else entirely. A victim. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my sister, not my coworkers, not even the friend who once warned me that Fallon gave off, "run if you're smart" energy. I just got in the car, drove the 2.5 hours to a bland corporate cafe off the freeway where Cameron said to meet, and spent every single mile rehearsing what I'd say when I finally came face to face with the man who helped gut my marriage like it was a weekend hobby. The coffee shop was quiet, fluorescent, filled with men in cheap ties and women with Bluetooth earbuds arguing about sales targets. He was already sitting when I got there. Alone, wearing a charcoal jacket with the sleeves rolled and a watch that looked like it cost more than my car. I half expected him to smirk or stand or offer me a handshake, but he didn't. He looked up at me with tired eyes and said, "Wendell." I nodded and sat. The anger I expected to feel never showed up. Maybe because he didn't look like a predator. He looked like someone who hadn't slept. Someone who, for all his polish, had lost just as much as I had. "I appreciate you coming," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "Let's not pretend we're friends," I said flatly. "I just want answers." He nodded. "You deserve that." I let the silence settle. Let him squirm if he needed to. He didn't. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket and slid a folded paper across the table. It was a printed email thread. Fallon's name was in the subject line. Dozens of messages. Her to him. Him to her. Most of it sounded innocent at first. Work stuff, scheduling meetings, follow-ups after conferences. Then the tone changed. One email from her simply read, "I can't sleep again. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that meeting room thinking about your hand brushing mine." My throat closed. I skimmed faster. There were plans. References to our weekend. Jokes about me, thinly veiled. He thinks I'm at a silent retreat. Ironic, right? More messages. One that simply said, "He doesn't ask questions anymore. He just makes dinner and waits for me like a dog at the door." I had to stop reading. Cameron sat still, watching me with something that looked a lot like guilt. Maybe pity. I didn't want either. "You slept with her?" I asked, more of a confirmation than a question. He took a long breath. "Yes." The weight of that word didn't hit like I expected. It didn't land like a hammer. It just sank slowly, the way old wallpaper peels from a damp wall, something ugly that was already coming loose. But it didn't end there, Cameron said. That's why I reached out. He leaned forward, lowered his voice, and said something I'll never forget. She told me you knew, he said. She said you were okay with it. My jaw locked. What? She said your marriage had been over for a while, he continued. That she'd tried to leave you before, but you begged her to stay. She said you were emotionally unstable, that you'd threatened to hurt yourself if she walked away. I blinked. She told you that. He nodded. And that's why I kept my distance after the lodge. Because I realized I wasn't just part of an affair. I was part of a story she created. One where you were the villain. One where I was her safe escape. He pulled out his phone and opened a voice memo. I debated showing you this, but I need you to understand. She's not who you think she is. He hit play. Fallon's voice poured through the tiny speaker, smooth and sweet and terrifying. If he finds out, just tell him I was lonely. He'll blame himself. He always does. Wendell's harmless. He just breaks a little every time I push. But that's how I get what I want. The blood drained from my face. My ears were buzzing. She didn't sound ashamed. She sounded amused. Cameron hit stop. I recorded that the morning she left the lodge, he said. She didn't know I caught it. I started seeing who she really was, how she uses people, and I knew I needed to warn you. I stared at him hollow. Everything made sense now. The calculated timing. The way she tried to come back into the house like nothing happened. The envelope. The retreat. Even the emotional affair lie. All of it was scripted. I was never her husband. I was her audience. And now? Now I was her liability. The thing no one tells you about betrayal is that it doesn't end in the moment it happens. It echoes. It lingers in everything. The silence between text notifications, the taste of your own food, the glance you catch in the mirror when you're not prepared to see your own face. After I left that cafe, after Cameron's voice memo finished playing and the weight of what she'd done pressed against my chest like wet concrete, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even drive home. I sat in my car with the engine off, staring at nothing for over an hour. And then I decided I wasn't going to break the way she wanted me to. Not this time. Fallon had always counted on me to be quiet, to accept things, to fold. That was her mistake. Because what she never realized was that people like me, the quiet ones, the overthinkers, the doormats, we only appear weak when we haven't reached our limit. Once we do, we don't rage. We dismantle. I drove home that night and sat at the dining table with the house still smelling faintly like her perfume. I opened my laptop. I scrolled through every photo we ever took. I looked at her face 1,000 times. I read every message she ever sent me, and the tone shift was so obvious in hindsight. The way her I love yous turned into thanks and her good mornings into silence. I should have seen it earlier, but I didn't. Because I trusted her. Because I loved her. Because I was an idiot. The next day, she texted me. Can we talk in person? I think I owe you that. I didn't answer for 5 hours. Then I wrote, sure, tomorrow, noon. What she didn't know was that I'd already copied every one of her messages to Cameron from her synced email account. She had forgotten that she once logged into her mail on our shared iPad, and it was still syncing quietly in the background. Every deleted email, still sitting in the archive. Every travel receipt. Every reservation confirmation. Every flirtatious exchange disguised as business correspondence. She left it all there like breadcrumbs for the man she thought would never question her. And I let her keep talking. I let her come to the house the next day wearing neutral colors and a carefully rehearsed expression, the kind of look people wear to funerals where they know they're partially responsible. She stepped inside like she wasn't sure she belonged anymore, glancing at the rug she once picked out, the shelves she once rearranged 100 times because they never felt balanced. Now they did. The whole house felt balanced, actually, ever since she'd been gone. She sat at the kitchen island, hands folded, and said softly, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I want to be honest now. I nodded. I didn't stop her. She spun her story like she was laying the final bricks of a monument she hoped I'd respect. She told me it was all emotional, that she never meant for it to go so far. She said she felt suffocated, that she thought I didn't see her anymore. She apologized, cried even, wiped at her eyes like they still produced anything real. And I sat across from her and let her perform. I nodded again, occasionally muttered, I understand. I even reached out and touched her hand once. just to keep her calm, just to keep her talking. Because liars are most vulnerable when they believe they're being forgiven. That's when they say too much. That's when they start building your case for you. She said Cameron manipulated her, that he knew she was vulnerable, that it wasn't a real relationship. It was an escape, she whispered. A mistake I was too scared to stop. I almost laughed. When she left that afternoon, I walked her to the door, hugged her lightly, and said, "I'm not angry. I just need some time." And she smiled, relieved, convinced. She had no idea that I already had every receipt, every message, every password she never changed. She had no idea that Cameron had already given me the audio file and sworn affidavit. She had no idea that while she was confessing to one isolated moment of weakness, I already knew about the other man she'd been messaging 6 months earlier, the one she called a favor from Vegas. She had no idea that I'd made a lawyer's appointment that morning, and she sure as hell didn't know what I planned to do with everything she left in this house. Her laptop, her journal, her calendar filled with initials and private dinner dates disguised as client strategy sessions. Fallon thought she could control the narrative. She forgot one thing. I was the narrative. I had been the whole time. I didn't blow up her world. I didn't go on social media and post screenshots, didn't email her boss, didn't confront Cameron in public. I didn't even leave a dramatic note. Because the truth is, Fallon didn't deserve a show. She had already spent years performing, lying with her eyes open, building entire illusions, and casting herself as the misunderstood heroine. The last thing I was going to give her was a final scene. What I gave her instead was silence. And consequences. My lawyer was efficient, sharp, and methodical. She said something during our first meeting that I'll never forget. You don't need to destroy someone to win. You just need to remove their power over you. So that's exactly what I did. We filed for divorce quietly. The prenup, which Fallon had once insisted we didn't need, and which I insisted we sign anyway, was airtight. Infidelity clauses, asset protection, paperwork that once seemed paranoid was now my shield. She didn't fight. She couldn't. Not when every lie she'd told was documented in her own handwriting and digital footprints. She left with less than she expected, less than she wanted, but exactly what she'd earned. The house. I kept it, but I changed it. I painted the bedroom, removed every trace of her, sold the rug she loved, replaced the bed, donated her furniture, tossed every candle and pillow and pointless decor item she used to scold me for not appreciating. I even changed the locks, not just the physical ones, but the emotional ones too. The ones she used to pick open every time I hesitated to stand up for myself. The laptop? I wiped it clean, not out of spite, out of closure. And the journal? I left it on her doorstep one rainy Thursday morning. No note, no threat, just a gift, a return of something I no longer needed. Her words weren't mine to carry anymore. In the weeks that followed, something strange happened. I started sleeping again. I mean really sleeping. No phantom noises, no imaginary texts in the middle of the night. I cooked for myself. I went outside more. I joined a book club at the library just to get out of the house, where I met a woman named Elise who talks too much and laughs at her own jokes, and whose smile isn't rehearsed, it's earned. We've only gone out twice. I'm not rushing anything, but for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm in a room with someone who's waiting to leave it. Fallon did text me once after the papers were signed. Just one line. "Do you really hate me?" I stared at the message for a long time. And then I typed, "No, I just finally love myself more than I ever loved you." I didn't send it. I deleted it. Not because she didn't deserve to read it, but because I didn't need her to. The victory wasn't in the last word. It was in not needing one. She never texted again. And now? Now I live in a quiet house that isn't full of ghosts anymore. Just music. Just peace. Just new beginnings. I was the man she thought would break. But I didn't. I became the man she'll never know again. And that's the happiest ending I could have written for myself.